I remember I called Casey. I said, you got to see this turtle. I've never seen anything like this. And I mean, and you're talking about, for me, 3 decades now of just being completely immersed in studying turtles and other reptiles, and sure, we have plenty of personable turtles, but there was something different about Otis. He was almost like he was trying to connect on some wavelength. And I got to be careful what I say here, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm thinking this is something impossible,
Well, and this will just frustrate the listeners when they hear this. So this is the comment. You claim to be some herpetologist, but you keep common shit. Show us something rare for once. I can see better shit in my own collection.
You got to come see this right now. And I'm like, what? And I go over there and they're holding a blue box turtle, I mean, bright blue skin, fire red eyes. It even had some white and some like blood red, orange markings. I mean, it was like...
Okay, we are back from the break. Welcome back to the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dylan Perrin, and thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're a regular listener, you know that I took the last 2 weeks off to just, enjoy the holidays and take some time away from YouTube and editing, and, basically took a time away from reptiles in general, almost, besides obviously caring for my own collection. But I really disconnected from the internet and from Facebook and Instagram, and it was really nice, I have to say. But it is good to be back, and I did record a bunch of episodes while I was on my break, so we have a bunch kind of loaded up, ready to go, including this one today. Today I'm speaking with Chris Leone of Garden State Tortoise, which is an organization that focuses on breeding, rescuing animals, preservation, and conservation, and is run and operated by both Chris and his wife, Casey. I'm sure many of the listeners are familiar with Garden State Tortoise, and if you are familiar with them, you are certainly familiar with the turtle Otis, which is an eastern box turtle that came into Casey and Chris's life about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And we open up the conversation there, and Chris tells us all about what makes this turtle so unusual and unique. It's really fascinating. And of course, we discuss Garden State Tortoise, how they got started, how they've developed it into what it is today. Chris also lets us in on an incredible background tip, a tip for making beautiful background, something that I've never come across of before. And he talks us through how to do it. So hopefully some of you actually try it as well, because it's a brilliant idea. We discuss a strange blue-colored eastern box turtle that Chris had found in the wild, which they've now tagged and they're doing some genetic research on. And finally, we discuss this blog post that Chris had made a few months back, specifically discussing that attitude in the hobby where if it's not rare, it's not important. You hear people talk about this all the time, whether that's actually discussing endangered species or just different types of morphs. If the species is just a normal leopard gecko, then people seem to, look down on it or not care about it and value that life less. And Chris wrote an incredible blog post discussing how poisonous that attitude is, and it was really, really great, fascinating conversation. So we discussed that as well. And actually, we also discussed hibernating tortoises through the winter, and I think that's it. But we did have quite a range of conversations, so I know you will enjoy it. Before we jump into it, please make sure you head to animalsathomenetwork.com if you're looking for more information on this episode or any other episode that has been produced up until this point. If you would like to join us on Patreon, head to patreon.com/animalsathome. There you have early access to episodes, as well as the opportunity to ask questions to upcoming guests. And now that it's the new year, we will definitely be firing up a few more Zoom keeper chats, which are always a great time. So hopefully you can come and check out those as well. Thank you so much to CustomReptileHabitats.com for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you're looking for anything new reptile related, make sure you check out the affiliate link in both the YouTube description and the show notes. All right, let's jump into the first episode of 2022. Enjoy. Chris, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
I'm very excited to chat with you. Typically I like to lay the foundation first, but I'm just too excited to talk about this one topic first. So I think we need to start talking about Otis off the top of the show.
Okay.
Because this Otis has taken the world by storm in some ways, and I would just, for some people are probably listening that actually aren't aware of him at all. So maybe you could talk about who he is and how he came into your life and what's peculiar about him.
Sure. He came into our lives. It's funny. It's kind of been a blur already. I feel like we've had him maybe 2 months now. And when the YouTube video came out, we had just gotten him. It was like that video came out within like a week, and we do pretty much all the rescue involving turtles in the state of New Jersey. So whether it's Fish and Wildlife or one of the commissions or the zoos, they and the rehab centers, they always come to us, and 9 times out of 10 it's red-eared sliders. But we do get our fair share of other turtles. A lot of times they're native, and in this case it was a native eastern box turtle. And my buddy John Bergman, who runs the Popcorn Park Animal Refuge, he's a wonderful man. He does incredible things for wildlife and even domestic animals, and everything at his zoo is a rescue. Everything from the lions to the cougars. They had an elephant at one time. They have a huge Aldabra tortoise. Everything is a rescue with some kind of crazy story. And he even though it's commonplace for us to do stuff with him and take animals that need homes, he feels bad after a while. He's like, he'll be here with like 30 red-eared sliders and a couple other things. And then like the next day it's like, hey, I got another one. So the one night he calls me and he goes, I got another box turtle for you. And I'm like, all right. And, box turtles are no problem for us. Number one, we love them. They're one of our favorite things. And number two, especially when it's the Eastern, they're native here. So it's kind of no skin off our backs to house them. We have big pens. They just go right outside. They start living a natural life, and that's it. It's not like, having to take a big sulcata and bring it inside and figure out what the heck you're going to do with it for the winter, So I was like, no, that's no problem, John. And he was like, yeah, well, this one's different. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he can't live with any other turtles. I was like, oh, what was he mean? He's like, he's mean to other turtles, but you got to see him. And I'm like, oh, all right. So I hung up. I didn't even say anything to Casey. I was like, John's coming down tomorrow with some other turtles. She's like, oh, okay, great. Can't wait to see him. So he shows up that evening and he's got, some red-eared sliders in boxes, and we're unloading them. And I'm like, where's this box turtle you're talking about? He goes, oh, he's back here. So he opens up the door to the van, and here's Otis stretched out. Just like he just chilling, took the ride. Like, what's up, dude? And I was like, what's going on here? He was like, this is what I'm talking about. There's something's up with this turtle. So he was explaining to me how the turtle didn't want to be around anybody, any other turtles. It would flip them on their backs, terrorize the females, fight the males. But he just wanted to be around people. So like they had him, I think, in like a back room because they weren't going to put him on exhibit or anything yet. And he would just constantly chase people down and try to interact with them, the whole thing. So I was like, okay, so he told me all that. And I tried, and still to this day, we try to get some information on his background, because when his video took off, of course, there were a million questions. Some people thought he had been stolen, maybe. Some people just couldn't fathom why somebody would get rid of an animal like this. Well, in the end, why does anybody get rid of any animal? It doesn't have to be a particularly charismatic one like Otis. People get rid of old dogs because they're tired of it. They don't want to deal with it. They want to get a puppy. People do things like that, unfortunately. So I kept trying to get information, but all John could tell me was that he was with his previous owners for 10 years, that they did keep him outside in the summer, and that he was inside for the winter, and that they fed him normal box turtle food. Well, he definitely was fed the right thing, because his growth and his stamina and everything is flawless. He recognizes the right foods. You know what I mean? He's not going after pizza. He's going after worms, snails, all kinds of stuff that box turtles should eat. So, I brought him in our building that night, and our little nature center, and didn't think anything of it. And then like the next day I went out there, and he just immediately, he just started in with me, and I've never seen this kind of behavior where, I mean, if anybody's, you've seen the video, it's just really hard to explain what the turtle is trying to do. And that was just kind of like, I remember I called Casey. I said, you got to see this turtle. I've never seen anything like this. And I mean, and you're talking about, for me, 3 decades now of just being completely immersed in studying turtles and other reptiles, and sure, we have plenty of personable turtles that beg for food, chase you down, Greek tortoises that'll ram your feet, Blanding's turtles that are climbing on your feet to get food. Everybody's got some kind of personable reptile. We have snakes that have a lot of personality, but there was something different about Otis. He was almost like he was trying to connect on some wavelength. And I got to be careful what I say here, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm thinking this is something impossible, So one thing led to another, and we just kept watching his behavior and how he would constantly follow you. He would pull on your pant legs. He would climb up your foot, and he kept doing this thing where he would just stare you in the face. And, I've reached out to a lot of different people that have studied box turtles on a professional level, whether it's in the field or in captivity in the zoo world. And nobody can really come up with any bona fide reason for why he's doing this. A couple theories is that, with box turtles, the males will study the eyes of another individual, to maybe they're picking up on the color of it, which could be why the female and male's eye color varies. So we thought maybe that's what he's trying to do. Is he trying to figure out what I am? Is he trying to figure out what Casey is? He's so used to people that does he realize that he's not even looking at another turtle, but his only way of doing it is to study your eyes, because he moves with every single movement you make. His eyes follow yours. And that was it. That was it really. We just started, putting out content with him, the video, and then that just went haywire. So we started making shirts, and those started flying off the shelves, and now he's just, I guess he's a famous turtle. I don't know.
Yeah, it is incredibly bizarre, and it's very dog-like. For anyone that hasn't seen the videos, I'm sure most people listening to the podcast have seen the video, but he just looks like he's acting like a dog. And the most peculiar thing is the way he looks at you guys. Yeah. He's staring at you, and it does look like, without trying to personify him, it looks like he's thinking and trying to figure out what's going on. It's very strange.
It's almost like there's some kind of problem-solving ability going on there. And I even tested it in the video. It's not a feeding response. Now that he's settled down, he gets excited to eat, and like I said, he eats all the normal foods that he's supposed to. He knows how to take down an earthworm, no problem. But he, during this whole, trying to figure out what was going on here, because I knew that people right away were going to be like, oh, that's just a feeding response. But then we proved in the video that it's not, So there's definitely a little bit of a level of aggression there. Nothing over the top. I mean, again, we're talking about a box turtle, so how bad could that really get? But I tested it in the one follow-up video. We started making these Otis short videos where I purposely get close enough to him, and he latched right onto my nose, and it was, it hurt.
Yeah, I imagine that hurt. And so you wonder. But it's not like it's full tilt aggression all the time, because it's not like he's coming after you guys all the time. It's something different than that.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy, man. It's like, nobody can, I've had people write in that are, animal behaviorists, veterinarians, zoologists, and they're all like, man, I don't know. The guys that I work with have come over to meet him, and they're all just completely perplexed. It's just something totally different. And again, we work with a lot of personable animals here, and even smart animals. A big part of what we do is with North American wood turtles, which is arguably considered the smartest reptile on the planet. And when you put them up against monitor lizards, there's a lot of gray area there, but especially for turtles, they're incredibly smart. They do have problem-solving capabilities, but Otis is just, it's crazy, man. And you know what? Like, I see what people are saying now. Why would somebody give this turtle up? But we'll never know. I mean, it's been, a couple months now. We even thought once the video took off the way it did, maybe the old owners would come back and be like, hey, we want that turtle back, thinking he was worth something,
Yeah. Well, maybe it was the only turtle they ever had, and they just assumed that's how box turtles were. You never know. And have you tried, do you think you'll try pushing training wise, seeing if you can get him to learn more things and solve problems and whatnot?
I think we definitely want to do a bunch of different things with him. We were trying not to, we did a couple of the Otis shorts. We featured him in a couple of videos here and there. We didn't want to oversaturate people with him. We also want people to know that, it's not just Otis here. We've been doing this our whole lives. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot to us, but, and part of that too is we don't want to just put out silly content. That was the purpose of the shorts, was to do a couple funny things with him, where he bites my nose. I did a Halloween special with him where I carved out some pumpkins and stuffed them with fruits and stuff to see if he would respond to them. But even in that video, he was more interested in me than the 3 pumpkins right in front of him that had strawberries and bananas and all this other stuff hanging out of them. So what we're doing, like you just said, is we're trying to think of different things that we want to do. One thing that we definitely are going to do in a future video is introduce him to a female. He's a male. He's got to get some frustrations out. He's going to go through those annual peaks in the spring and fall where he needs to breed. But we're nervous about the right turtle to put him with, because a lot of the turtles that we get, like him, are rescues, but they were part of groups. We get a lot of confiscated animals that are severely compromised, and they're all carrying some kind of weird diseases and stuff. And even though a lot of the turtles appear healthy now, it doesn't mean that they're not carrying something. And God forbid we introduce that to Otis, we could lose them. So we're going to wait for the perfect turtle to come along. She's clean. She's going to get screened and get checked out by a professional to make sure that she isn't carrying something that can be passed on to him, and even vice versa,
Yeah.
So we want to do that. And then we definitely want to try to test his intelligence with some level of training, which is great because Casey was an animal trainer, for 2 different zoos. And she worked with, a lot of stuff that can kill you, So there's definitely plans on the horizon to try to figure out, try to get some kind of explanation,
Yeah, that's the thing, is it is just such a mystery. So it'll be interesting to see how far that goes and yeah, how it develops. So I'm sure everybody will be watching to see how that goes. Well, why don't we rewind and get back to the origin stories of how you have made your way to where you are now. So how did reptiles first pop into your life?
5 years old, sitting in a sandbox in my parents' yard, playing with G.I. Joes. And my father was mowing the lawn and he hit a box turtle. One just like Otis, a male box turtle that happened to crawl into our yard. And this is in central New Jersey, or northern New Jersey, if you're local. And he just grazed the top of it. I don't want people to think he cut this thing in half. He put a little scuff on it. The turtle was lucky. It just so happened to be sticking up out of the grass, and he just scuffed the shell. And he gave it to me, and that's all I remember. From that moment on, it was just turtles. It wasn't Ninja Turtles anymore. It wasn't G.I. Joes. It wasn't, I still love dinosaurs, but it wasn't just dinosaurs anymore at the time. It was, I needed the real thing. I needed to have turtles. So, we didn't know any better at the time. And my dad, coming from Italy, where this was common practice, he drilled a little hole in the marginal scoot in the back and tethered it with a fishing line. And we had that turtle for, I don't know how long, a couple times over the summer. It would break the line, escape. We would find it again. And we knew it was that one because it had the abrasion on the top of the shell from the lawnmower. And then one day that thing finally snapped the string for good and was like, I'm out of here. There's no way that there's no way these clowns are finding me again, And so then I just, from that point forward, I everything had to be turtles. For Christmas, I got a red-eared slider, and then that escaped because I didn't know what I was doing. And then my parents got me a painted turtle. And then I found more box turtles behind the yard, behind the fence in the yard. And my dad would build a pen for them. And we'd keep them for the summer and then release them. And then that snowballed into other reptiles, and I would dabble in snakes and lizards and amphibians here and there. And then, it just snowballed from there,
So during that time, as you're going through high school and middle school and whatnot, were you thinking that you'd move towards a job that focused on reptiles?
I was and still am extremely stubborn with that. I didn't want anybody to teach me. I didn't want anybody to tell me how to do it. I had to do it on my own. So I drove my poor parents crazy. They wanted me to go to college, become a veterinarian, become a zoologist, biologist, or whatever. And I fought them on that. And then I was also a musician at the time. So right out of high school, I went on tour. So I kind of left the reptile thing behind for a while and focused on the music career and got to a certain level with that, dabbled in a couple different bands, each one having different levels of, minor success. And then when I met Casey, I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to be on the road anymore. I was comfortable, I was happy. And we just had this crazy idea. Cause at that point I was like, what am I even going to do? I literally I'm in my late 20s at this point and I have no real career mapped out. I just know one thing that I'm good at, which is, reptile husbandry, the biology of them, the whole thing, but I had no schooling behind it. And so we had this idea to start Garden State Tortoise. And the name Garden State Tortoise just came from a screen name that I was using for years on these reptile forums and stuff, And then, I approached her with it. I was like, what do you think about starting this? And she's like, I think it's a great idea. Let's do it. And we started it with the intent to just be a breeding facility, just be a breeder that could just, be the best breeder in the world, whatever, And that's what got us our first push. And then there was just things that happened along the way that morphed us into what we are now, which is, we are still breeders, but there's just so much more to it. That's just one little piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd love to dig into that a little bit, because I do find it fascinating when people make that transition from, okay, I want to be a breeder, I want to supply the pet trade with animals, and then sliding into what you do now, which is way more broad and way more preservation and conservation focused. Was there certain events along the way that was just like, I need to do more, like more purposeful, breeding and keeping, or how did that transition into something more, conservation focused?
I honestly think it comes from being a kid that just wanted to be in the woods all the time. We're huge Disney fans now, and that's where we vacation. Casey's a Disney travel agent. But when I was a kid and my parents would try to take me to Disney, what do you think I was doing there? Do you think I wanted to meet Mickey Mouse or go on rides? No, I was trying to catch anoles and other lizards that were running around in the different vegetated areas of the parks, So I always wanted to be in the woods, and I became obsessed with the habitats. So even at a very young age, I didn't want to keep turtles in tubs or tanks or tortoises in boxes, even though sometimes I had to because I just had a bedroom. I wanted to have these naturalistic environments, which just kind of enabled me to dive into, the ecology and biology behind all of this. So I think that's definitely probably where it stemmed from. And even still to this day, like, I'll make something for these animals and I'm still not happy with it. It's still got to change. It's still got to be more naturalistic. It's still got to be this, still got to be that. So I think that's what opened my eyes to seeing what these animals were actually going through. You know what I mean? And also seeing how the rest of the community, and this is very big in the turtle and tortoise community, where everybody's like focusing on like the same few animals or the same groups of animals. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, what's wrong with our American species? You know what I mean? Like, nobody's paying attention to these things here, and they're disappearing just like, the ones from Asia, the ones from Africa, So that started to happen. And I started to write a lot of different articles. I started with making videos on YouTube. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing. And I actually missed the boat on that, which I'll get to. And I guess through all that, our name just started circulating. And before we knew it, we had like fish and wildlife agencies contacting us, asking us if we could take in confiscations. And that was eye-opening. It was like, wait, why are they trusting us? Why us? And then we really just developed a very solid relationship, especially with our state wildlife agency. And the more and more that kept happening, other avenues opened up, which became why we do these rescues with the zoos. Casey started working for zoos. And then I would say like our first, like, I don't know how to call this. Like, the only thing that's coming to mind is like big break, but it's not even that. We hatched twin tortoises in 2015. And kind of like the Otis thing, I just made this quick, silly video. It's such a boring video. Like, I'm not even talking in it. And it just hit the news. It just went crazy. Like, millions of views. Fox News coming to our house to interview us about this. Was like before tortoise twins were cool. Now it seems like you see somebody hatch them like every few months.
You were the original.
I there were people before me too. But for some reason, this particular story just took off, and I missed the boat on YouTube because I wasn't taking YouTube seriously at the time. I was like, well, whatever. I didn't even monetize that video, man. Like, it got 3 million views. And I'm like, what's monetization?
3 million views. That's crazy.
3 million views. Yeah. And then I did a couple other like super boring scientific videos to follow that up with just tortoises in general that would get like 30,000, 50,000, and then I just abandoned YouTube and I focused on Instagram and Facebook, and those two accounts got big, and that's where it's been resting for a while until everybody kept pushing me. Dude, you got to do YouTube that. You got to do it. It was hard for me to get into it because all I kept thinking was I had the video that made it, and I never did anything about it. I can't, it's not going to happen again. And it still hasn't, as big as Otis has gotten. And we've had a couple other videos that have similar amounts of views that he has right now. 3 million views, that's insane, and that's not even the top tier of what a lot of these accounts are getting out there these days, So altogether, it was one big jump into education. So that's what we became. We became this like conservation, preservation, education company. We're still breeding, but we're doing a lot of work with conservation, and I actually have a paid job in conservation now. And it's just kind of come full circle. We kind of have our hands in a little bit of everything now,
So can you talk a little bit about the sort of the iterations of Garden State Tortoise as it started? Because I'm guessing, like you had mentioned, was it at the beginning at your home in your garage type thing, and then now I know it is still at your home, but I'm sure you've moved locations. Because when I see your videos now at your current property with your current nature center, it really does look like the perfect setup for you guys. You have all these incredible pens outside and this amazing building. I imagine it did not start there. I know it didn't start there. So where did it start?
It started at my parents' house when I was just using the name Garden State Tortoise as a screen name. Like I told you, I would be on kingsnake.com and Fauna Classifieds, and I would be on the tortoise forums and the turtle forums as Garden State Tortoise, and, but it was no official entity or anything yet. It was just a screen name. And, at the time that I first started using that name, I just had turtles at my parents' house, a couple small pens in the backyard, and then, tubs in the garage or in the bedroom that I always irked me, but it was the only way to do it during a New Jersey winter with some of this exotic stuff. And then the first big thing we did, I don't remember what year it was, but my dad made a deal with me. He said, if you help me take down the swimming pool, because we had this big above ground swimming pool in my parents' backyard, but nobody used it anymore because we were all grown up. He goes, if you help me take it down, we'll turn it into a big turtle pond. I was like, oh my God, So we did that, and we built this huge, awesome pond right off the deck. So it looks like when you're standing on their deck that you're actually on the water, which you're not. But I still to this day, when I go to their house, I'm like, man, that pond, like we just knocked it out of the park when he and I did it. And we built it for Blanding's turtles, and we put some other species in there. So that was the first, like, I think I'm onto something here. I think I could, I would love to have like a real facility one day, like not necessarily open to the public, which we still aren't, And so then, and the turtles stayed there, then I went on the spree of living with all my buddies in the shore towns and my party days and stuff like that. And just still had turtles at their house, And then when I met Casey, we decided we wanted to live together. So we rented this big old farmhouse built in 1891 on 10 acres in more northern Jersey. So we moved into that place, and actually my sister moved in with us at the time, and we just started building all these pens there. And we had an unfinished basement downstairs that stayed nice and warm in the winter. So I filled that with all kinds of enclosures, and I really that first house that we rented was really how I guess I became like more creative and artistic with the enclosures. And there's still plenty of photos of those old enclosures on our Instagram and even YouTube, where you can see like how we were really able to bring this like these very natural looking enclosures to life, And then fast forward 6 years or so in that house, and this is all while things are starting to snowball. We made Garden State Tortoise official, and different things would happen here or there to boost us. People were coming to film with us, more news coverage and stuff. And then my wife became pregnant with our first daughter, and we were like, we have nowhere to put a baby. Like we can't do this. It's not safe. So she was panicked. I talked to our landlord, and he was going to let us like use his warehouse for the animals for like just the cost of paying the electric. The warehouse was a mess, and it would have cost so much money to get it, suitable to house animals. So she pushed me to start looking for a home to buy. And I thought, there's no way this isn't going to happen. We're not going to get approved for a mortgage. So one day we would come down to this village in South Jersey, where we would just love to get breakfast. We just come down here to get breakfast, walk around the village, and go home. And she was being sneaky, and she was looking at houses for sale down here because South Jersey is significantly cheaper than North Jersey. And she found this, and it was a just over 2 acre property with a brand new house that was just built in 2011 with a 1,200 square foot pole barn that was almost finished, just needed to be wired and all that. And against my better judgment, I was like, we could try, well, we ended up getting the mortgage commitment, got approved, and we bought the house and moved in in Halloween, 2016. And then it was like, once like the excitement and the reality settled down of actually getting this place, it was like, wow, now we can go nuts, and that's what we did. We just started making huge enclosures. And then we started finishing the building, which eventually became the nature room, and that's how we landed where we are.
Yeah, I've rented all my life, or all my adult life, and I can imagine that moment when I do buy a home. There's probably that feeling where you think, you could break down a wall if you want, but you don't really there's that moment when you just I can do whatever I want. I could trash this. I could take this wall down. I could paint it. I can do whatever. I don't have to ask anybody. And because now, as you're renting, everything is like, should I do that? Should I really put enclosures in this room? I don't own it. So yeah, that seems amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the nature center? So you guys built it, and what is in there, because it's a really unique setup. And I would like you to also answer why there's gravel on the floor, why you guys decided to do that.
The gravel thing actually started long before we decided to turn it into a nature room. And the reason was because when we bought this place, we were tapped. We were broke because, we had to buy the house, and we had to also get as much built and set up in the fall. It was, we moved in on Halloween. So now we're in November. South Jersey is significantly different than North Jersey when it comes to its climate. There's times in the dead of winter where I can literally go outside and just a t-shirt on, it doesn't last, but it happens. So here we are, it's November, the temperatures are dropping, the leaves are falling, and we've got hundreds of animals to get set up. So I'm cashing in favors with family members. They're coming down with shovels. We're digging. Where my mother-in-law was able to get me unbelievable amount of wood. I mean, it looked like a lumber yard here. At cost, but it was still a fortune because of the amount we needed. And we were trying to figure out how to cut corners. So when it came time to start finishing the building so we can get the exotic stuff inside, we priced out a concrete floor with drains and stuff. And it was just for what we were going through, it was astronomical, and we just couldn't afford it. So we're like, what's the next best thing? So one of my buddies was like, dude, just do a gravel floor. And I was like, what do you mean a gravel floor? And they're like, think about it. It's going to be really warm in there because of all the lighting and heating and everything. Even on the coldest nights, it's going to be really warm in there because the building's insulated. You don't have water out there. You don't even have a sink, nothing. You could just dump everything right into the floor, and and I'm thinking, that's awesome. So for 6 years now, or just over 5, that's what we've been doing, is just dumping stuff right into the rock. And it just goes right into the ground. There's nothing to worry about. And then, we can, rinse out water dishes and stuff in the house or with the hose, whatever. So we decided to just keep going that route. And then when we decided to turn that's just half of the building. The other half is not the nature center. We wanted to keep the gravel floor, but I wanted it to be more attractive. It used to just be like the blue driveway stone in there. So I removed a bunch of that, but still left a thin layer of it. And then we just brought in a ton of pea gravel. And the reason we did pea gravel is because it's aesthetically pleasing, and because you do find pea gravel in the pine barrens, in different areas where there's Cedar Creeks and stuff down here. So that's why there's a gravel floor.
Yeah,
it just works.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and it actually looks really good. And as you were saying, with the older place, you were learning how to make things look aesthetic and whatnot. And now I love the way the whole room looks, but also each enclosure. And I think one of the things that you do that I've never seen anyone do is the photo, the printout backgrounds.
Oh yeah,
I've never seen. Did you come up with that idea, or have you seen someone else do that? It's such a brilliant idea.
Well, again, I always so many of my buddies in the hobby are like, dude, you're crazy. Why are you paying attention to it? And it's like a disease. I can't help it. I want to feel like I'm outside even when I'm inside, So I knew I wanted to do these really awesome backgrounds in there, and I couldn't figure out, I didn't want to just go buy aquarium backgrounds or whatever. And what happened was we started with the nature room. The first enclosures that went in was my dad, my uncle, and my brother-in-law and myself. We went out, we bought a bunch of different materials, and we built the snake enclosures. And those are the ones that are along the wall that are white with the glass fronts. And they're made out of, I always say this wrong, I don't know if it's melamine or melamine, the particle board that's coated in white.
Yeah.
So it's not a glass background. So you can't put something behind it and see it. So I had to figure out how to put a background inside the enclosure that could get wet and not get ruined for like, if a snake spills a water bowl or you want to spray them down and make it look like it's raining in there. So Casey and I kept like racking our brains. We're like, should we print things out, get them laminated? And then, and it was getting expensive and stuff. So then we found this company called Smart Press. And, maybe if anybody, maybe they'll get ideas from hearing this. They're called Smart Press and they print corrugated plastic signs. It's just real thin plastic, but it's sturdy and it can get as wet as you want because it's made to be outdoors. So what we did is we went out to the Pine Barrens, different areas that I actually work at, and we took these really nice landscape photos and had them printed. You can make any custom sizes you want. Like the ones for Otis are like 5 feet long and there's 2 of them. They print the exact photo on there. And then you can, if you need to cut it down a little bit, you just take a utility knife and cut a little bit off. It's very easy. And then we just use some caulk, some sealant and put it all, lather it up on the back and it just glues right to the back of the enclosure. So it looks awesome. Everybody who comes over, it looks so good.
So it's really amazing because even like those old school like fish backgrounds can sometimes come off as like tacky, it's like these like right. Weird like background, but those look like you're looking through a window. And the way you have the substrates, obviously because you live in that area, so you just go outside and gather a bunch of stuff off the floor, and it just fits in with the photo so perfectly. It's just such a good idea. Thank you. Yeah,
I hope. I'm glad you brought it up because I always forget to bring that up, and I think it can give people some really good ideas because there's a good amount of people in the hobby that really want to go. They're tired of looking at just a glass background, and even the animal. Maybe the animal's noticing like, oh, that's a tree, that's not a wall, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that was like one of my favorite things to do in there, and I actually rushed it. Like it wasn't even time to do that yet. And I'm in here with Casey, like making her stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning so we could like order the sizes we need. And she's like, you're not even putting the snakes in anytime soon. I'm like, I don't care. I know this is going to work. I got to see it,
Yeah. You have that vision.
Yeah. So anybody listening, smartpress.com, corrugated plastic signs. You can print whatever you want on them and they're great for reptile enclosures.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're rugged. They're not going to fall apart. It's a brilliant idea.
The only thing I will say, if you use them for, lizards that have more powerful claws, they probably will scratch them a little bit,
Yeah.
But, that's a chance you got to take, I guess.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And then you have the building, the indoor building. You have a few animals in there, snakes and turtles, and there's some tortoises in there as well.
There's one tortoise, Iris. Okay. She's a Texas tortoise, and she's the only one in there because she's the only American tortoise we have.
Right. Okay. And then outside, you have quite a lot of. You have how many pens outside?
Oh boy. Man, I don't know the answer to this.
A lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. And we've like broken down walls to, blow certain pens out and then put in walls to make certain pens smaller, depending on the animals we're trying to accommodate the actual size of the animals or the size of the group that's in there. But God, I don't know. Cause now there's the aquascape pond too. So that's another pen. There's got to be like 50 or more, pens out there.
Yeah. And those are, can you talk about just how you build those pens? Like it's very basic. That's sort of makes me jealous as how easy it is to build a turtle pen outside, how cheap it is, just a couple pieces of wood and that's it.
Well, I mean, now thanks to the pandemic, wood is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So now, I mean, I went to go do a divider in one of the pens this summer, just a divider. I think it was like I needed like 25 feet. So I needed like, 2 levels of planks, a couple posts, and like another plank to make the lips so the turtles can't climb. It's like $350.
Yeah.
To make a divider, Yeah. So it's just insane now, man. But yeah, I mean, all I do is. I just go to Home Depot and I get pressure treated wood, which contrary to popular belief is perfectly safe to use for turtle and tortoise pens. And it gets weathered quickly, but it lasts at least up here. I've heard people from like Florida and Georgia say that it won't work down there because it's just too humid and it'll rot. But I mean, I even brought some wood from the old place. So some of these planks that I've got are like 10, 12 years old now, and they're in perfect condition. And that's it really, just decide how we want it to be, and it's all it is just, I get those those landscape timbers, those 4x4 landscape timbers to use as posts. Those go in the ground like 18 inches or 24 inches if it's like a kind of wet area. And then the board gets flush up against that and screwed in. And then the corners are capped off, or if it's a species like wood turtles that can really climb no matter what, the whole pen gets a lip, like a shelf across the whole top. And depending on the species, depends on how far into the ground we go. Most of the pens are anywhere between 18 and 24 inches tall. So for the Hermann's tortoises, they get like maybe 18 inches. There's only a couple of inches that the plank actually goes into the ground because they're not big on digging out. But something for like a Russian tortoise, it goes in further because they can dig. And then like our alligator snapping turtles, those walls are they're like 3.5, maybe 3 to 3.5 feet tall, just because we have kids. And if, the female comes up to lay eggs, if she were to get out and then somebody gets too close to her, but that's really it, man. It is pretty simple as far as like the perimeter goes,
And you don't do anything like for the species, like Russians, for example, that are going to be digging. You don't do anything underneath. You just, your solution is just digging, or, putting the walls further into the ground, and that's it.
I once read, in a book, I can never say the guy's last name. Forgive me. His name's Wolfgang, and the initial of his last name is W. He wrote the book, Naturalistic Keeping and Breeding of Hermann's Tortoises. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's a complete expert on the subject, and he's from Germany. And he was the one that opened my eyes to, if you make the pen spacious enough and naturalistic enough, the tortoises are not going to want to get out. Granted, there's going to be times where they pace, like when females have to lay eggs, and they get restless. But if you make the tortoise confident, comfortable and content, it's not going to try to dig out. So still, as a precaution, I go a little bit in there, and yeah, I have never had a tortoise dig out. Never even try,
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember I was talking to someone else about this with monitors, and I think as humans, we always put our own minds in a tortoise. We're like, they're going to want to dig down, they're going to dig under and get out. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, the turtle's not necessarily thinking about, how the fence works and how to get underneath and get out to the other side. So they're just going to dig down and then come back up.
Right.
And one of my patrons actually had a question for you that was to do with, I think it was box turtle breeding. I think maybe he had heard you talking about it on maybe the podcast, and just the use of tubs and racks and when they can be used and how to effectively use them, and then when to move them out. So I think you do use tubs, or you recommend using tubs when you're breeding box turtles. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that work, and I'm actually still experimenting, but I've found, and I did a video on it, where what seems to really work well. I mean, number one, to preface this, box turtles have to be incredibly humid and they need water. They absolutely need water. People have to get it out of their heads that you can't compare box turtles to tortoises whatsoever. Okay. You just can't. Not even the ornates in the deserts that come from more scrubland like tortoises do. They are always seeking humidity. That's why ornates and desert box turtles spend so much time underground. Sometimes they're underground 90% of the time because that's where it's humid. That's where it's wet. They don't want to be out where they are going to fry. So especially in the case of like Eastern three-toed Florida, Gulf Coast, Yucatan, Coahuilan, and even Mexican box turtles. And this even goes for Asian box turtles. I do the same thing with our Chinese box turtles. And on the rare occasion when we have young flowerback box turtles, they have to be subjected to water. So one of the best ways to do it is to take something like a snake enclosure, something like a vision cage, a herp cage, or like the custom ones that we made. And something that is going to just be completely closed in, just a little area for ventilation or light, or heat, or some kind of heat where you're doing heat tape or like a ceramic heat emitter or spotlight. And so this way there's just an incredible amount of humidity. And then when you actually place the neonates, the hatchlings, in shallow water with just like a little bit of things to hide under, like a fake plant or a live plant, or some of those coconut hides that they use for like baby snakes and hermit crabs. The turtles are fully subjected to being in water all the time. So that's not going to hurt them. They're constantly absorbing the moisture that they need from the water they're in and the air around them. And it also helps to keep them a little more active so that you're not constantly trying to find them. Okay. Box turtles are inevitably programmed to stay hidden. That's it. They know they're vulnerable. They know they're bite-sized. They hate bright light. So they only come out when there's that spotty light to bask a little bit, and then that's it. They're gone. They heat up real quick, and then they head down into leaf litter, pine litter, mulch, whatever they can find, and they just stay there. And think about it. These areas that they force themselves to stay in are loaded with little invertebrates and stuff. So they don't even have to go out looking. They could just be sitting there for hours, and the next minute, something comes walking by, or a little tiny worm, and that's it. That's a meal right there. Mm-hmm. So that, and just constantly absorbing the precious moisture, they swell up and they just grow and grow and grow and grow. And they get out of that fragile stage faster. Now, I'm not saying anybody should rush any reptile's growth. It doesn't matter what you're raising. But something like a box turtle, a lot of problems happen with box turtles, and they happen usually very quickly, right away. You want to get them out of the fragile stage as quickly as possible. And you want to try to get them to be a little bold so that they're eager to feed. And this method, this water method, seems to work for a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you can see why people might gravitate towards keeping them more dry. They're very land-based turtle, and they're going to get desiccated, and probably a lot of them die just due to that. Oh,
it's constant, man. There's guys that have like pet stores that'll call me up, and they're trying to buy baby box turtles in bulk for their store. So they buy like 50 3-toed box turtles for their store. And then they're calling me up, man, I lost 25 of them already. What's going on? I'm like, how are you keeping them? I'm like, I just got them on topsoil with a water bowl and a mercury vapor lamp. I'm like, dude, you're cooking them. They are literally, they're just sitting ducks. They're cooking. And that's the other thing, is they don't need that kind of heat. Box turtles are not walking around when it's 85 degrees and sunny. They're just not. They're gone. They're going to wait till the thunderstorm comes and drops it all the way down to the low to mid 70s. And then they're going to walk around because it's overcast.
So do you think that they make a good pet for the hobby for herpetoculture because of that? Because they are going to be a species that are going to be hiding. Like if you're someone that's, an advanced keeper and you love the species, it's a different story. But if you're, little Timmy that's going into a pet store that wants a turtle, does that work out well? Or do you think they should maybe be more reserved for advanced keepers?
I don't want to deter the young kid that, if that's what's going to spark them to go further with whatever direction, whether they're going to become a zoologist, or they're going to have an amazing reptile company, or they're going to, become a biologist, whatever. I don't want to deter them from it. But I think overall, people need to they got to think outside the box a little bit, because the internet is still loaded with, inaccurate information. I mean, the Facebook groups are the worst. They're still, telling you should do this when you shouldn't do that. And I got tired of I left them all. I don't even, you know what I mean? But they're not easy. Okay. If you can set them up like that right away, you might find yourself seeing that it can be very rewarding. It's kind of a tough thing to answer, because when you think about the structure behind the way I'm explaining to set them up, it's really not much. You're talking about putting them in a humid area, basically, and then putting another tub inside that with just some water and places to hide. And the point is to keep them at consistent temperatures where they're staying warm and humid, and then also giving them a day and night cycle, because they do need that. They respond to that. But it's not as straightforward as some other things. And people tend to panic too. The turtle hasn't eaten in a week, which, by the way, is not alarming. Okay. Especially when you first get it. All right. That animal is going to take a while to settle. And don't forget that these animals can go a very long amount of time without eating anything at all. The water is what's crucial. That's when it's going to keep them thriving for a while. And I think they start getting frustrated. They lose their patience. They're constantly picking the animal up, and they're, oh, what's wrong with it? Let me take pictures of it for this guy so I can ask him. Let me post this on Instagram and see, now you just stress the animal out. Now forget it. No matter how well you set it up, it's not going to eat for you, So I think if you can go into it with the right mind, it can actually be very rewarding for you. But one thing I got to say, which this has been a little bit of a negative reaction from Otis's popularity, you're not probably going to get Otis. People, I want a box turtle now. I want a box turtle now. And I really hope people aren't going out and taking them out of the wild, because you're definitely not going to get that, No. And that's why I want people to understand is Otis, it has nothing to do with his species. He really is one of a kind. We don't know what's going on with him. So I think people need to know that if they're trying to get a box turtle because they want Otis, that's the wrong reason to do it. a box turtle naturally should be timid, and should respond to hiding areas and human interaction by, not coming to you for a hug or whatever he's trying to do, So if you go into it with the right mind, you truly love box turtles, and that's how I do. You know what I mean? I don't care how Otis acts. Like, sure, this is amazing for us that this is happening, but I have hundreds of box turtles and none of them act like him, and I love them all just the same, So it's kind of a fine line to say whether they're a good pet or not. I don't think they're the best thing to start with. I think there are other species out there, the Eastern Herman's tortoise, as a captive bred baby, you really can't go wrong with that. You know what I mean? That's going to be a lot easier to maintain and get a better, reward out of, But hey, if you're a kid like me and you grew up on box turtles and you can really put a good head on your shoulders and do it right from the get-go, then maybe a box turtle is for you,
Yeah. Well, and the one thing for me, because I love seeing the natural environments and whatnot, and I love the natural habitat of a box turtle. I think it just looks cool. Like when you set up Otis's enclosure there, his pen, I love the way it looks. It just looks it just looks like a place that you'd love to go for a walk. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I'm really happy you said that, because that's exactly what I was going for. When I took the pictures for his backdrop, a coworker and I were going to one of our sites to work, and it was actually a spot that we saw a box turtle across the road. So we knew it was their habitat. We just hopped out, found a really cool spot, put the panoramic view on, and just took the photo. And then that's what we printed out,
Yeah. So, yeah, it's so cool. You posted a really great blog post. Was it maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now on your website? And someone had left was it a comment on your YouTube channel? Or no, it was someone commented on the blog, I think.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It was a direct email, actually.
Oh, it was an email. Oh, so they actually went out.
Yeah, dude. It was designed to get to me. It was how can I, because, we do listen to what, the viewers want on YouTube and everything. But if people want me to keep making videos, and Casey and I keep making videos, we can't pay attention to the comments, because you know how evil of a place social media can be. These people are allowed to say whatever they want, and they attack you for things that don't even have anything to do with the video, So I think this person knew that they weren't going to get our attention by posting a negative comment on one of our videos or posts. So they emailed us directly through the website. And I did, in the blog post, I write out verbatim what the guy or woman says, but they wrote, what was it now? Jeez, it was,
I just had it up here. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, pull it up and read it,
because it's worth saying. I have. Well,
that was the thing. It was like, this needs to be, this wasn't even out of anger. It was like this needs, because this comes up a lot. I see people bullying each other all the time over this crap.
Well, and this will just frustrate the listeners when they hear this. So this is the comment: you claim to be some herpetologist, but you keep common shit. Show us something rare for once. I can see better shit in my own collection. It's almost hard to read without laughing. Like
I know.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. So
but I can see how that would just that would get you so mad.
Yeah, it got me. It was like my initial reaction. I mean, just like anybody, you read something like that and you're like, what the, you want to kill somebody. But right after that, I just kind of was like, this is a problem. You know what I mean? And I see it in the hobby, but even in the zoo world, and even in the conservation world to an extent, everybody's got to work with the rarest species, the most endangered species. Oh, I have this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, you just have a box turtle, but I have this, and I hate that, man. Who cares? You weren't a kid once with a red-eared slider? Because I was, and I thought it was awesome, and that just prompted me. I hadn't written a blog in a while, and we've been getting a lot of subscribers to the blog and the website. So I was like, this might go the wrong way for me. People might be like, oh, dude, shut up. But I don't care. Blogs are supposed to be what you're feeling anyway, Mm-hmm. So I went off in what I think is a very respectful manner. I wasn't, losing my cool with it, but I just wrote this long blog post about how if you are in this just so you can brag about the species or the morph or the whatever you have, please get out. Just get out of it now, because you're ruining it for everybody else. And those are the kind of people that often fall into really negative situations to where the legislation that's already looming over our hobby gets a leg up. You know what I mean? Because they're usually the people that do something wrong. And it's just, I was just getting tired of it. And then the fact that this person reached out directly through our website to make sure that one of us saw that email, and it was, I had to address it. And I want people to know that it just doesn't matter what you keep. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make you cool. You don't get a high five from anybody who, is significant in this community or industry, whatever you want to call it, because you have the rarest turtle from Asia or the rarest snake from Australia. Like who cares? We all came from a place where you were just falling in love with what you found in your backyard or in the woods or what somebody got you from a pet store or what you saw in the pet store when you went to pick up your dog's food. And that's the people that lose that passion to me are just, there are some people that choose to keep just rare or endangered species because they have a mission behind it, and that's great. That's awesome. But if you're going to go around trying to make the person that doesn't have rare species or maybe not as many rare species as you feel small, you're a joke. You're a complete joke. It's garbage. It's bullshit, and the response to that blog was awesome. People started sharing it like crazy. And I guess it hit a nerve because I think a lot of people were feeling that, I think people were like, I don't know if I should post a photo of my 3-toed box turtle right now because it's not going to get any likes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. You know why? Because it's a classic, amazing, beautiful species. And it doesn't matter if, you can buy one for $20, but you can go buy the Asian version of it for $2,000. Who cares, man? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that as somebody who does have both common and really rare stuff too, and it's funny, like people will even say to me like, hey, respectfully, they're not trying to be a jerk or anything, but they're like, you post a lot of photos of box turtles or red belly turtles, and those are common species, but don't you also have blah, 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 which we do. And I'm not like purposely not posting photos of that stuff. I have no shame in my game admitting that these are my favorites and I just happen to gravitate to them. They're not getting any better care than anybody else. Everybody's getting the same care, but I just find myself sitting in awe looking at these species that are very nostalgic from my childhood. And that's what I tend to focus on with my content sometimes. But hey, maybe you are a kid from Asia that your first turtle was like the rarest turtle in the world. But you know what? That kid or that grown man or woman at this point is still passionate about that species because it's from their childhood. They're not into that just because of the price tag on it that the hobby's putting, Yeah. So I just wanted to get across a better message because I know people that have gotten out of it because, that were doing really good things because they just couldn't take, how people were viewing them anymore,
Yeah, and it's almost like a glitch, and it's very reminiscent of the what we see on the morph side as well. Like, and you had said, if you're in it for that reason, then you should get out, and it's so true. Like a lot of times, those are the people that will lose their shirt on some sort of morph deal that goes awry. All of a sudden, the ball python they bought is now worth nothing because the guy next door has bred it, and it's just the wrong reason. But it's the same mindset. It's the same eagerness to have something that the next person doesn't have. Right. And a point that I loved that you made in the blog post was being endangered is not a badge of honor for these animals. It's very much the opposite of that, and to exploit that as the keeper of it is just so wrong.
It sucks. It's you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's endangered. Why are you smiling? You know what I mean? That sucks, man. That animal's endangered, like legitimately endangered, and for terrible reasons. It's been eaten, it's been poached, its habitat's gone. When it comes to snakes, people are still killing them. These idiots are still killing snakes, not understanding their importance to us directly. You know what I mean? How they're controlling rodent populations. And I mean, a timber rattlesnake can be responsible for eating anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 rodents in one active season. Do you not understand the importance of that?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Like, it's not that. I'm glad you said that. I wish I thought of that way to word it when I was writing the blog post. It is not a badge of honor. The animal is not cool because it's endangered, and you certainly are not cool because it's endangered and you have it. It's intriguing. Again, if you're in it for the right reasons, this animal is endangered. How can I put more of them on the planet so that it doesn't continue going this way? That's fine. That's great. I do that, but you know what I mean? Like you should have no shame in your game. A red-eared slider is a drop dead gorgeous animal. Not the albino, not the caramel pink albino, not the het for invisible bubblegum, whatever. Yeah. The red-eared slider, okay, is beautiful. It's our fault that there's that many of them. You know what I mean? But hey, guess what? They're not endangered. That's great. They're in places that they shouldn't be. Again, human error. You know, they're native here now when there shouldn't be. I remember being in Jamaica and seeing them, and not the Jamaican slider. It was the red-eared slider, you know?
Yeah.
But, and you know, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not a morph guy. I like the natural appearance of any animal, but I'm also not a fool. I'm not going to look at some of these morphs and to be disgusted at them to an extent. Mm-hmm. Like, I was just at Brian Barczyk's place out in the Reptarium, and he's got, you know, all his massive retics on display in these big, beautiful enclosures that these huge snakes can actually stretch out in, which most people can't do. And the colors are out of this world. They're outrageous, you know? So yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the aesthetic, you know, aestheticness of it, you know, but it's just not my thing. I like the natural state of these animals, you know, and that's another thing that people are getting carried away with. You know, we have a ball python in our lab at work, and I was holding her the other day, and I was just like, what is wrong with this snake the way it is? You know, It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And you know, even you see this on the reptile side, you know, leopard geckos, for example. People won't keep a leopard gecko because they're just too common. And you think, well, that's a weird reason not to keep an animal. You should keep it because you do love it. And
right.
I've even seen it in the comments, and it's sort of the same sentiment that this person, you know, sent that to you. So did you ever respond to it, or did you just respond on the blog, or?
I just responded on the blog. You know, whether that person saw it or not is one thing. And, you know, the thing that I've learned over the years, you know, there was a time earlier in my career where, you know, and we've all done it, where you get negative comments from people and you just go back at them, and it turns into a war. You might lose your cool, and now you look like the fool, even though you didn't do anything wrong to begin with. And so I didn't want to do that. This was a different approach. This was I'm going to take this comment publicly, let people know what this person saw to me. And if they hear about it and they see the post, fine. You know what I mean? But to me, it was more, I'm not going to accommodate this guy or girl. Again, I don't know if it's a woman or a man. I'm not going to accommodate them. I want to accommodate the people that might be suffering from something like that. You know, the kid that's thinking about getting out of it because he doesn't have as rare a species as the people that he is trying to network with at a reptile show, on a forum, or in a zoo, you know? And, you know, I've heard it, you know, I people that I'm friends with have even said it, like, oh, I only keep endangered species. I only keep really, you know, if it's endangered, I keep it. It's like, dude, I remember when I had my first beer too, you know, but it's like, you know, whatever you love, it doesn't matter. If you love it, just love it because you love it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be, who cares about its status, you know?
Well, and you can kind of see how it's almost, that mindset is very much like it's a sort of an artificial mindset in a way. I'm going to see if I can explain this. It's the metaphor that I always use is, imagine if giraffes weren't around, like they were extinct, but we found their fossils and we could set up their fossils, and we would go, that is insane that animal existed on the earth. But now that they do exist on the earth, there's a less of an appreciation for them. Not saying people hate giraffes or anything, but there's just as less like reverence about this animal that does exist. So there's this strange thing that happens with just the human mind, that you gravitate towards things. It's more like a fantasy thing, like gravitating towards sort of fantastical things.
And it's kind of like I forget exactly how she says it in Jurassic World, when they're talking about why they created the hybrid, was because kids look at she says kids look at a stegosaurus like an elephant in the city zoo. You know what I mean? We've become desensitized to some of these animals, you know. I mean, a big deal, it's an alligator. Big deal, it's a crocodile. Big deal, it's a giraffe, you know. But you're right. If this animal was gone, okay, and we were unearthing its fossils for the first time, we would be like, what is this thing, you know? And to me, that's one of the reasons why any reptile is incredible, because if you think about it, turtles with their shells exposed, and snakes having no legs, and just the capabilities of lizards, you know, and crocodilians, like they're all amazing, but that is exactly what happened. And it's the same thing that they try to portray in that movie, you know, is that we get bored with things. We're gravitating towards the next big thing. How can I become more oppressive? How can I get more likes, more comments, more this, more that, you know? I don't even know if in the last like however many YouTube videos we've done, if we've even featured any of our really endangered species here. It's all kind of been like just whatever is being presented us to film at the time, like Otis came into our lives. So we filmed that. The video coming out Sunday is about another very weird turtle that just came into our life last week, but it's not anything rare at all, So I definitely see exactly what you mean. That was a good analogy there,
Yeah. It's a sort of a mirage effect where you can never actually get to where you think you need to go. Mm-hmm. And one other thing that, speaking of rare, was the blue box turtle that you guys had found. Can you just tell people a little bit about that and if there's any updates on that story?
Yeah, it's very little update, but we were doing our my wife runs the Terrapin Conservation Initiative for the state, and she anybody who's familiar with it, it's just a conservation project for the state where she processes female terrapins, is a constant watch on them. Eggs are removed for artificial incubation, the whole nine. Really cool project. She's done some amazing work, and she's saved thousands of terrapins at this point in just 3 years. But we were doing terrapin work, and we were on our way back, which our area is the terrapin area. We were on our way back for the day. We weren't even out of the marsh yet. And here comes this box turtle just trucking it across the road, coming out of the salt marsh, not even in the woodlands. So we were with two other of our friends that were helping us for the day. And we all get out of the truck and I'm used to seeing box turtles around here. So I didn't rush over to it, plus it's not going to exactly run away, So Casey and our friends go over there. And the next minute I hear them making a big deal. And I think I was doing something on my phone and I'm getting out of the truck and they're like, "You got to come see this right now." And I'm like, "What?" And I go over there and they're holding a blue box turtle, I mean, bright blue skin, fire red eyes. It even had some white and some like blood red, orange markings. I mean, it was like, we were completely floored by it. And initially my buddy Andy from the National Park Service that was helping us that day, we were both kind of like, is this an Eastern box turtle or is this a Mexican, but it, morphologically, aside from the blue coloration, it was all Eastern. Everything about the beak, the head structure, the shell, the legs, everything about it was Eastern box turtle, but the color of the head just threw us for a loop. Now, the box turtles in these, barrier island areas and coastal populations are known to be very, very colorful. 1 in every 3 is like mind blowing, but this one was like something totally different. So I reached out to Fish and Wildlife. I do a lot of work with them, and they were super excited about the turtle. They're like, "Oh my God, that thing's amazing." So we agreed to pit tag it, fit it with a radio transmitter and release it. And then I would just radio track it, So I tracked its movements for a little bit. This was fall when we released it. So the turtle, all it really did was it hung out for a little bit in the immediate area that I released it on that video. I think it was the video that came out right after Otis's video, actually. And the story of the blue box turtle, that's what it's called. And I released them. I tracked him a couple times, and just about 2 weeks ago, he's safe and sound. He is in his den for hibernation. I know exactly where he is, and now it's just a waiting game to see where he wakes up, when he wakes up, and what he decides to do. Because part of the reason why they want me to track him is to see what he's doing out in the salt marsh. Right. Because some of our associates that also do terrapin work and stuff, they are running into, it's not a lot of them, but they're running into these like unbelievable looking males in the middle of the salt marsh too. They don't know why. And the good thing is these are all protected areas. It's all wildlife refuge, constant watch on these animals. So they're very safe where they are. But it's going to be interesting to see why he's there, what he's doing, maybe what he's looking for. Is he eating something that, is only occurring there? I don't know.
Yeah, it's so weird. And so could that population of box turtles that are being found in the marsh, are they sort of sequestered away from the rest of the Eastern box turtles in that area? Like, is it like very easy to flow between those two?
It's easy. It's pretty easy. You go from one habitat to the other. They kind of bleed into each other. And there's certain plants that are indicative of the area, so you know where you're at. It was just kind of interesting to see him that far out into the marsh, especially because, like I was saying before, box turtles like cover. They want to be in a wooded area. One of the official names of the eastern box turtle, which is never used. But if you look on the taxonomic list, it's listed as this is woodland box turtle because they love woodlands. They like the patchy sunlight where they can move into a little area of sun, warm up, and then get right out of it. Some of these areas are so dense, they're almost impossible to walk through, if you're radio tracking one of them. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't know much yet. Like I said, we're going into winter, so he's safely asleep, and I probably won't see him until sometime in April.
Well, it will be fascinating to follow up with that story, just because, who knows? Its behavior is one thing, and just the way it looks is another thing. Very strange.
And the one thing to point out really quick, it's not age. He's a younger turtle. He's in his prime. He's still got a lot of growth annuli on his shell. You can see he's not completely worn. So he's not, because sometimes people, especially with the Gulf Coast box turtles, some sources associate the blue and white heads with age, extreme age, and that's not the case with him. So we did take genetics on him. I forgot to add that. We took blood, not blood. We took cloacal and mouth swabs, and we sent them out for genetic testing. And but there's no word on that yet. That stuff takes a long time. So
yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Well, maybe we'll kind of wrap up a little more questions with the collection that you have or the animals that you have at your place, because I was curious. Obviously, we're talking about you keep a lot of species that are native to your area. Are you doing anything sort of biosecurity wise to protect your animals from wildlife and vice versa?
Yeah, it's funny. That was one of the most popular questions I've gotten over the years. So I did a whole YouTube video on how we do that, and dude, like nobody watched it. It was like I gave you guys the video, but you know how it is. If it's not a turtle, if it's not a turtle that's acting like a dog, a lot of people won't click on it. But anyway, we do a lot. We have very high powered electric fences around everything. We have 3 different camera systems. We have traps set every single night. We have dogs. We have motion sensors. We have sonic devices. And we even have bird repeller devices that play during the day. And one of the biggest problems we have in this area is with crows, and crows just love to eat turtle eggs. They have facial recognition, so they'll follow you around. And as soon as you turn your back, they'll grab an egg or a baby, or they're even capable of picking up an adult spotted turtle that's like, 4.5 inches, and they won't really kill it, but they'll be able to pull it out of the pen and leave it out of the pen, so that when they fly away and the turtle comes out of its shell, it's dispersed. It ends up leaving, So we have this bird repeller device that you can set it to repel the species you're trying to get rid of. And what it'll do is it'll play that bird's distress call, and it'll also play 2 or 3 of its natural predators calls. So for crows, we have it set so that it plays the crow's distress call, and it plays Cooper's hawk and red-tailed hawk, which are 2 birds that'll go after crows. And it works like a charm, it plays randomly so that the crows can't get used to it. Okay, this is going to go off every, they're that smart. They can figure things out.
They're super smart. Yeah.
So yeah, we that's the kind of stuff we do. Obviously with new animals are quarantined and stuff to an extent. If it's from an unknown source, or if it's an animal that comes with some background, it'll sometimes be able to go in with another animal or a group of animals. But like I was saying with Otis, we want to pair him up, but we're taking that very seriously. He is a turtle that he's just been the center of attention for a long time. So he's probably clean as a whistle, and a new turtle that may not be some of those diseases are very serious and there's no cure for them. They can wipe out a whole collection. So,
yeah. So you have to be really careful, especially when you're dealing with wildlife right there as well. I mean, who knows what wildlife can bring in, and you're dealing with the same species, so you do have to be careful. And right. I know that the I'm not sure if you're familiar with Celtic reptile and amphibians. Or Celtic reptile and amphibian. They're two keepers that keep outside in the UK, and they watched your biosecurity video, I'm pretty sure. And they used it, so you can feel good at least. They learned a lot from it. I know that.
Well, that's awesome.
So you got at least one good view out of that was implemented for their outdoor keeping.
Well, that's great.
And the last thing I wanted to chat about as well was you do a lot of the hibernating outside with many of these species. And I was actually surprised to see how many of the species you do keep outside for the winter, considering New Jersey does have at least a little bit of a substantial winter.
Yeah, I mean, it's way worse in the northern part of the state. When we get snow down here in the southern portion of the state, we like jump up and down for it because we never get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow.
It's rare down here. And because we're coastal, we'll get like a good snowstorm and then it's gone. Like it all melts because of the salinity in the air and stuff. But anyway, but don't get me wrong, we get really cold snaps and we go up and down. That's the other thing. Like the high yesterday was 37. That was the high. Today it was 55. Tomorrow is 70. And all week is in the 60s, but then it'll just snap. We can have like a random 75-degree day in February, and then it's 20 the next day. Mm-hmm. So it's weird here like that. But, the species that I hibernate outside are just species that can do it, that are able to be subjected to cold one way or another, or rather know how to respond to the trigger. Okay. Florida gets cold. Okay. A lot of people don't realize that. I spend a lot of time in Florida. I have been in Florida where I am freezing, like, running to a store to buy clothes to get warm because I thought I could wear shorts.
Yeah. I've done the same thing in Florida too. It's shocking how cold it can feel in Florida.
So our Gulf Coast box turtles, our Florida box turtles, our three-striped mud turtles, our alligator snapping turtles, they have no problem whatsoever handling our winter here. It's just longer. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's been years and years and years of us doing it. And the animals they just end up following the same kind of cycle that the animals up here do. So, our Florida box turtles, I think they're the prime example. Okay. They wake up in April, just like the Eastern box turtles do. And by June, they start laying eggs for the year. The only difference between them and the Eastern box turtles are the Eastern box turtles lay in June, usually only once, and that's it. You get absolutely nothing else out of them. The Floridas keep laying all summer long. 1, 2, 3, 4, and some females even laying 5 clutches in one season. They're very prolific. Same thing with the Gulf Coasts. The three toads are a little bit more like the Easterns with reproductive behavior, but again, they all follow the same cycle. I saw 2 three toads walking around today. And then right before I signed on to talk to you, I made sure that they went down for the night because it's only like 40 degrees out there right now and they're gone. They found their forms. They went back down to them. So that is the biggest thing, is making sure that these animals respond to those triggers. And it's the same thing with the Mediterranean tortoises. All 3 types of Hermann's tortoises, several types of Greeks, marginateds, Russians, they can handle the winter here. And in some cases, which again, people don't realize, take the Russian tortoise and the Eastern Hermann's tortoise, for example, their winters are worse than here. Their winters are worse than a lot of parts of the United States over there. Okay. Russian tortoises are buried under snow for 7 months, And the other thing is, snow is an insulator. Okay. Yeah. When it snows, we don't panic. We're actually like, this is great. They've got a nice blanket over them. They are really being kept at the ideal temperature now under the ground to stay inactive and not be in any danger. It's when it's dry, there is no precipitation at all, and it's that cold. That's when it can get dangerous. Because if an animal, for some reason, makes its way to the surface and it's that cold, they're going to get frozen to death. Yeah. Fortunately, that doesn't happen. But again, these species, they respond to the triggers. And take the alligator snappers, for example. People are blown away that we keep our alligator snappers outside for winter. They are all the way up into Iowa. Okay. Right. They come from areas where they get a real winter. There's, you can Google it. There's an image on the internet of a researcher. I don't know what state he's in, but he's laying down on the ice, and the ice is that thick to where it can hold him. It's a grown man, and underneath him is a massive alligator snapping turtle just hibernating for the winter, Wow. Yeah. And he's in that safe zone. He's down there in a consistent temperature. He's not freezing. The water's oxygenated. You know what I mean? He's safe.
Yeah. Metabolism drops way down and they hunker down. And so do you use, I know you have these little basically greenhouse things in some of the enclosures. Yeah. Do you use those for every species, or do you allow some to just bury themselves down in their main enclosure and that call it a day? Anything from here, from the Northeast knows what to do. They don't need any kind of assistance. The Blanding's turtles and spotted turtles hibernate underwater. The wood turtles hibernate underwater. The Eastern box turtles dig into the ground wherever they want. They have a big pen that's partially in the woods, so they just usually pick an area with heavy leaf litter. Red bellies and painted turtles hibernate at the bottoms of their ponds. With
the Florida box turtles, and all the most of the Mediterranean tortoises, they get the greenhouses so that they can kind of decide what they want to do. That's where I like to intervene a little bit. They still stay out year round, but by giving them those cold frames or greenhouses, they can regulate themselves a little bit more. You know what I mean? And they use them. They'll come out on warm days. They'll warm themselves up. They might take a drink. They might even eat a little bit, but then they go right back in and they disappear. Some of the tortoises, we actually barricade to them so that they can't get out. Some of the Western Hermann's tortoises, they get barricaded in them because the Western Hermann's, even though they can handle winter and there's technically no such thing as too cold for them, a lot of them, depending on the locality of them, they come from these areas where the climate's very mild. Okay. So just for a quick example, the Hermann's tortoises, the Western Hermann's that come from the island of Mallorca, it rarely gets above 80 degrees there, but it never gets below 50, so it's not hot. It's not cold. Our summers here melt a Mallorcan summer. They're blazing hot here, but then our winters can be frigid. So I like to keep them in a little bit more of a controlled setting, but the main reason behind those cold frames is to make sure the tortoises are staying out of an area that floods. Okay. Because if they pick a low area and dig in and I didn't see it and I have no idea where they are, and then we do get a lot of snow and then that area floods from it, the tortoise is not going to survive that. So the greenhouse keeps them high, a little bit of a higher area where there's not going to ever be a danger of water pooling,
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess for the native species, like the East box turtles, is that ever a threat as far as drowning, or they're good? They know what they're doing.
Nope, they're good. Again, they're people say all the time that they're a tortoise. They're not. They are a member of the pond turtle family. If you don't believe me, go Google it right now. They're a North American emydid. They're in the pond turtle family. Water is their friend. And in the case of the Gulf Coast box turtles, right now, ours are hibernating at the bottom of their ponds. That's where they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have severe aquatic tendencies and they know how to behave as an aquatic turtle. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Well, I love the YouTube channel. I think I was talking to you before we actually started recording how I love the channel. I love the editing. Your wife does all the editing there. She does a great job. And so what are some, maybe you could just give like a quick outline of what you show on the channel. You've mentioned a few times, Otis and whatnot. And what are some other things that people can see on there?
We're trying to organize it a little bit better now for people, but we do a little bit of everything. We do family adventures, that usually always involve, reptiles or animals. We're raising our kids around this. So we're very transparent with everybody that's watching our channel, like how we're raising our family and how we're trying to do everything as a family. So we go on these adventures, into the mountains or somewhere else. And then we do a lot of care stuff. I always like to share with people the way that, that things that work for me that could work for them. I don't try to tell people this is the only way to do it. I tell them here's another option for you, and here's the proof that it works, and I'll show animals of all different ages that have grown up in the, situation that I'm describing the video so that they can see the proof that it works. We'll do that. We'll do identification videos. I love doing that. I love showing people, no, this is what it is. And this is what this is, and here's how you tell this from that. Most of it is turtles and tortoises. I would love to get some more snake lovers out there to watch our channel because snakes are a big part of our life. It's what I do for my professional job. So we're gentle with easing the snakes into the videos a little bit because we know we have more of a turtle following, but people can really see anything. There's videos that are funny. There's videos that are serious. When something goes south for us, we're transparent. We show people that too. We just recently lost our dog. And it was very emotional for Casey because that dog was like her security blanket and medicine for when things weren't going well in her life. And he was always there for her, and he became the Garden State Tortoise dog. And then we lost him. But then now we have a new dog. So we're just taking people through the day-to-day crazy life we have here with animals, and it's very turtle and tortoise based, you've been forewarned, but
yeah, well, it's a great channel and I love the content. I love seeing the enclosures and all the work that you guys are doing because it's nice when a channel is growing steadily and the animals are in good welfare that are being shown. And
Yeah.
it feels good to know that there's a member of the reptile community that has a channel that's showing really good care, and that's what's being promoted. So that's awesome.
Thank you. That's what I need. I need to hear that stuff sometimes, because sometimes it's like, how am I going to keep, you know what I mean? Because, you know, a lot of people, they want to see the most ridiculous things, and that's just not us. You know, I want to show you how to keep the animals. I want to show you how to build things. And again, it's not the only way. I'm just trying to show people what's worked for me or us, you know, and we love our family and the fact that we get to do all this stuff together. And that's what we're just trying to show people, you know?
Yeah,
so,
it's awesome.
Thank you.
Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you online, both the YouTube channel and any of the social media platforms and the website as well?
Yeah, the website is just gardenstatetortoise.com. You can check us out on Instagram, which is garden_state_tortoise. YouTube is just youtube.com/Garden State Tortoise. And same thing with Facebook, we're on there. So yeah, anybody that's just looking to take a ride with us, you know, we're pretty consistent. We're always showing you something.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I really appreciate this conversation. We covered a lot of different topics here, so thank you so much for being generous with your time and joining me on an episode.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is the end of that episode. Chris, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I really enjoyed our conversation. We covered quite a few different topics there, and I know the listeners will have enjoyed that as well. And I think we said, was it off air? Maybe it was on air. I forget. We'll also get Casey, your wife, on as well, because I would love to have a conversation with her too, because I know she's also a wealth of information. Listeners, I do hope you enjoyed the first episode of 2022. Make sure you go to the YouTube comments and let us know how you liked the episode, especially if you're listening to this on audio, which is a fine way to listen to the podcast. It's just when you're listening to it on audio, it's very difficult to engage in conversation. So if you listen to it in your car and you want to have comments or have a little bit of conversation about the episode, go to the YouTube version of the video of the podcast, because there you'll have other people talking about the episode in the comments, and it's a great way to meet other people as well. And if you are interested in finding more episodes or more information on any episodes, make sure you head to animalsathomenetwork.com. You can also join us on Patreon at patreon.com/animalsathome. And finally, thank you very much to customreptilehabitats.com for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You can find affiliate links, and man, you know, even taking 2 weeks off, I forget how to say these certain things. You can find affiliate links in both the YouTube description and the show notes. And I think that's all I normally say at the end. It's amazing how much of a habit I get into every week recording. When you take 2 weeks off, you forget everything. Anyway, that's not going to happen again for the while, because I will see you next Sunday.